So bridesmaids and groomsmen typically pay for their attire, so their
Okay.
dress, their tux. Sometimes brides and grooms will gift like the jewelry components to their bridesmaids or groomsmen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Let's Talk Wedding Show. This is the show that helps engaged and soon to be engaged couples with planning a wedding that is epic while getting real tangible insight from experts and leaders in the wedding industry. And speaking of experts and leaders in the wedding industry, I have a special person right here on the show today. Oh my goodness. The topic is going to be amazing, but I'm going to give that in a few minutes. But I want everyone to give a cyber round of applause for Sacoya Jenkins, y'all. Come on. There we go. I know y'all clapping in the background. Sacoya, welcome to the show. If y'all don't know, Sacoya is the owner of Jenkins and Co. Weddings. She is an event planner, wedding planner, and she's also a native of New York that loves pizza. Is that correct? You love
That
pizza
is correct.
and champagne, and you have a little guilty pleasure of watching reality TV. Is that on your
Real
couch when in your
housewives. Yes.
see,
Yes.
there it goes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have Sacoya Jenkins, and today's topic is wedding budgets 101. We're talking about all things wedding budgets, things that couples do that are correct, incorrect. I mean, she has a wealth of knowledge on this particular topic. But before we get started on the topic, Sequoia, tell me how you got into wedding planning. Why did you get into wedding planning, and a little bit of what you're doing right now?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Your intro was awesome. Pizza and champagne
Appreciate
and
it.
reality TV. That's literally me. Like
There you go.
I'm probably gonna have two of those things today because I can't have champagne right now, unfortunately.
Ah, there it is.
But okay, how did I get into wedding planning? So I think it is such the cliche way. I planned my wedding, and then I was like, oh, I really love this. But I think for me, it was more about the relationships that I built like through the process. So I was one of those brides that had like 10 bridesmaids,
Oh
and
wow.
just like the relationships that we had, the things that we did, it was just such a intimate process, and just getting to know them even better than I already knew them, and how I grew as a woman, on my journey to becoming a wife. And I just was like, wow, okay, I'm really good at being organized and planning events. I've always done it for my family. But now I really would love to be alongside another bride and other couples during that process because it's a beautiful season. And I think that's the one difference between me and maybe some other planners. Like, I'm not like the planner who's like, trendy and like all these crazy things.
Okay.
I just love getting to know my couples and being along for the journey of towards marriage. So that's
Nice.
how I got started.
Nice. What's one of your like favorite things overall about planning weddings, and if you can say it in one sentence?
I think the emotional connection that I make with my friends.
Okay.
All the times they'll text me and they'll be like, "Oh, I feel like we were friends and then we broke up." Like after the wedding. So, so I think that's my favorite part. Is just getting to know them.
The connection, and the connection is special with weddings because you really get to not only know the couple, but you get to know their family and their friends, and just see who they are as a person in other people's eyes. So it's definitely
Yeah.
a special thing as far as getting to know your couples. But we're here today to talk about all things wedding budgets. And listen, if you're on this show, it's not about any fluff. I'm not bringing
No,
anybody to the show. We may say some things. Sequoia may say some things as may make you feel like ouch, or I didn't know, or if you already got married and you're watching this and you're probably looking at it like, oh man, we made that mistake. So
uh huh.
going right into the question, my first question here is, what are the biggest misconceptions and mistakes with weddings and budgets?
I think that, and I appreciate you saying that no fluff, because if you know me, you know me. I'm no
Yeah.
fluff. And I made the same mistakes when I planned my own wedding. So I definitely can understand. The biggest mistake that I see is that there's no baseline for budgets. A lot of the times it's just like this random number based on what people are comfortable with. Because I mean, I don't know too many people that have unlimited bank accounts. So I get it. Sometimes people just set a number. They're like, X number sounds great. That's the wedding budget.
Right.
There's no baseline. They don't take into consideration the guest count, the city that they're getting married in, the things that come with weddings, like all of the things that come with a wedding. And so I think that is just the biggest thing that I see when clients come to me. It's just like this random number that they just picked up. There's no rhyme or reason for it. They just think it's a good number.
Wow. Let me ask you this now. Where that, and that kind of touches the expectations, and like, so where you think they're pulling this from, like, and then sometimes you go online and you may go to, I'm not gonna name the site, and they have like a generic
Yeah.
thing, like, where should a couple go to get realistic numbers, or can you share some of the numbers that you're seeing in the industry so they're not misguided
Yeah.
about that?
Absolutely. I honestly don't know where they're going initially to get the numbers, but my
Okay.
suggestion is that they always go out and reach out to a professional planner
Okay.
first. Because I think one of the misconceptions about just wedding planning and budgeting is that, like, a planner is just someone who just organizes and reaches out to vendors for you.
Right.
And that's one part of the job. But the other piece of it is that we're knowledgeable in the industry and we work in this industry and we're well aware of all of the prices.
Hmm.
I think, like, for yourself as a DJ, you're probably well aware of how much other DJs are charging. So
That's
you know
correct.
what the average in this market is.
Right.
But as a planner, we touch and work with every single vendor. And so we're able to look at a budget holistically and give a realistic amount based on the type and style of wedding you want to have, of course. But I think that's the biggest thing is that people are not reaching out to the professionals. They're kind of
Mm.
making the decisions up front on their own and then going to the professionals. And I think that's when, a lot of the disappointment comes in. They get the quotes and they're like, "Oh, this is expensive," and then they try to DIY it. So I think the first thing is just to start with a true professional in the industry, not just someone who maybe just has pretty events, but who has experience, who is knowledgeable, who knows the city that you're getting married in, because that's very important.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also considering the guest count, I get people that will tell me a budget and their guest count is like 250 and it just can't work. I
Mm.
don't think people consider their guest count either. They just consider like the number they want to spend, but not necessarily how many people they have to feed, how
Mm.
many tables they have to have decor for. And so
Mm.
those are all things that are very important when it comes to making a budget as well.
You said a lot of good things there, which made me think of a question. Man, if I'm getting married, I have no clue. One mistake I do see couples make on the DJ end is that they don't understand that the budget for a DJ that's doing your wedding is very different from the guy that's coming to do your birthday party or private event.
Yes.
So
Yes.
sometimes they immediately judge the price until they do research, but by that time it's too late. So
And that's why I say that it's important to reach out to a professional first.
okay.
To so once you have spoken with the planner, even if you don't decide to book with that planner, because I'm very big on educating my clients even on the initial call, I can advise of those types of things so that when they start getting those quotes, they're not shocked, or they're
Yeah.
not being like, well, this person is too expensive because they understand that it's a wedding cost versus like what they might have, like you said, what they might have thought for a birthday party or just
Right.
a friend who happens to play music.
Right. Right. What's eh, eh, I'm gonna ask a nit. Well, this isn't a nitty gritty question, but for a couple that's watching this, what are the top three most expensive line items for a wedding?
Good question. So definitely catering.
Okay.
And this is one thing that a lot of clients, especially those who did not set a realistic budget at the beginning, have a hard time understanding because I think it's
Okay.
very similar to what you said with DJ. They're just like, they probably had family reunions and for things
That's
where they
correct.
ordered food in and they just are like, why is food so expensive? But you have to consider the fact that you're not just paying for food, you're paying for service.
Ah.
So you have to have enough staff, again, that can handle the type of event that you're having. If you have a 250 guest count, you need staff and servers that can serve that guest count,
Hmm.
that your food is not coming out cold, that can clean up the event, bust your tables. I mean, it's like going to a high end restaurant.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't think about that. They just think it's food. I've had a family reunion before. We paid $500. What's the big deal? So catering is definitely that is like a big chunk of the budget. Also, a lot of times guests want to have open bar,
Okay. Yeah,
and
that is
lots of
correct.
venues and just bartending companies charge per person. And so again, it's not just like having, a casual event at your home where you're able to purchase the alcohol and serve it however you see fit. You're having to pay again for that service. So you're paying a premium for each person to
Mhm.
drink alcohol, no matter how many drinks they have. So food and alcohol is definitely at the top, top, top.
All right, what's
Unfortunately,
that? What's that third one? What's
the
the third
third one
one?
will probably be the venue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the venue, so catering can be your number one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Catering
Wow.
is usually cost more than the actual venue. It's usually double.
Wow.
I know.
I
I
personally
mean,
didn't
my
know
clients
that.
get those quotes. They're like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "This is the cost of catering in 2021."
Oh my, oh my. But I will say and I don't want to make this this isn't a if you're a catering company out there, we're not bashing you. There are some fantastic caterers out there whose
Hmm.
team is exceptional. Like
Exceptional.
and I don't even want to pick and choose or make anybody feel like they're left out there. There was this one particular catering company. We I was working with Rock, with who works for our company, and the couple got married inside of a house, a beautiful
Hmm.
house. All that the catering companies, it wasn't just the food they were serving. They were dressed a
Right.
certain way. They were cleaning up. You can tell they were working hard, even down to the vendor meals.
Uh
You
huh.
know, we had a one of my workers had a one of my team members had a restriction. I mean, she was working hard to make sure that they created something for him. I mean, it if she
Yeah.
gave us that much detail as vendors, I can only imagine what she was doing or what they were doing for the guests that were there. If you want to know who the company was, just send me a DM or whatever. I'll let you
I
know.
think
But
I have a good idea of who that
oh,
company is.
okay, so I mean, their food is
They're one of the only ones that I do like to work with because again, I think it's couples have to consider that it's not just the food that's going to go out to the guests; it's
yeah,
the entire experience and the
yeah.
level of quality of service that they're able to provide.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And segueing into my next question, we've talked about a lot of the things that can sneak up on you and be expensive. What are some ways that couples can actually save money on their wedding without going DIY? And I state that specifically because immediately when you hear save money on a wedding, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to do everything myself. And
Hmm.
I don't I'm gonna let you answer. I don't necessarily agree with that all the way because I still feel like your wedding day should be a day where you don't have to do a lot.
Hmm.
You know, if
I
you're still part of setting up and breaking down, and I dig it. If your budget has you doing that, there's nothing wrong with that. But how
yeah.
can you save money without going the DIY route, and just bringing that to everybody's attention so they can even see that it's possible?
So yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of the DIY route. I do think that sometimes it even ends up being actually more expensive,
Yeah.
both financially and just overall, just the experience can
Right.
be taxing on a person when they're, trying to do things that it's just not in there. They shouldn't be
Right.
doing.
Right.
But I think one of the biggest ways to actually save on your wedding is to cut the guest count. I think that a lot of the times when people go the DIY route and they do have the not so pleasurable experiences, it's because they're trying to make something fit that just doesn't fit.
Mm,
And when you're having a wedding, you have to consider that your budget is based on the amount of people that are at your wedding. So cutting your budget, there's no way to cut your budget if you're not cutting your guest count. It's just not possible. It's just
mm.
not. That's just one of those
Somebody
things.
just
I just have to tell my clients like that is what you have to cut because your budget includes your catering, so you can't get less food.
yeah,
You have to have less people,
yeah,
alcohol, even when it comes to decor, the place settings on the table, the flowers. I mean, you can't just have less flowers and still have the same amount of tables. So that is
yeah.
truly, I mean, honestly, that's my honest. And then there's other smaller things. So,
Mm,
like, you can spend less money on stationery, right? You can
okay.
just order from an online website versus going to get it personalized through a stationer. That's something that you could do. But I think those are just little small things. And I think they don't really make a huge dent in the budget like cutting the guest count will.
Wow. So okay. Now I'm vouching for that couple that has a parent that really wants certain people to come. They're torn between. Now there's a thing about if parents are paying, that's a whole nother thing. I guess that information
Yeah.
you can bring to your parents, like the more, so on and so forth. But like if your parents aren't paying, or something like that, you're paying for this out of your own pocket, and you got to cut the guest count to ease. the pain from some of these couples, where should they start first? Should it be the plus ones? Should it be, you know,
So I think that's a loaded question, and I think that it depends on the types of conversations that you're having around budget. And so, like, if you have parents or family members who feel strongly about people and certain guests being present, then they also should be part of that conversation and seeing the quotes and seeing the things, and so that it's not taken personally, but it's just like, hey, here's where we're at. This is the funds that we have. These are the quotes that we have. This is what we can do. And then you go through your list and say, hey, have I talked to this person in 5 years or not?
so that's
Does
that's the five.
every single friend on my guest list need to have a plus one from who might be somebody that they just met on Tinder or one of these other websites that they just, like you have to have those conversations. But I think when you have the conversation up front and you're not just coming at somebody saying, we're cutting our guest list, we don't care your opinion, it's two different things.
Gotcha. So leading into that and setting expectations and having those conversations, who pays for what? Like that's the like because there, you can go
Yeah.
and couples go to these websites and stuff like that. But like in real life, tangibly, who did daddy pay for it? Did the daddy side, mama side pay for it yourself? I mean, even down to step parents and stuff like that. Like, what have you? I won't. What have you commonly seen as far as who pays for what? What's courtesy? Even down to bridesmaids and groomsmen buying their own stuff. Can you give us a breakdown of who pays for what?
Yes, I will give you the traditional quote unquote American
Give it
breakdown
to us.
of how it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And then I'll also give you what I actually see in the market based on, I think a lot of things are also based on family style. And I'll just be honest, money.
Money.
There
Okay.
are some families that I've worked with where the parents of the bride, which is the traditional American way, have saved up and have an account ready. And they're like, this is what we have to offer for the wedding. We're paying for it. Um, and that's just that was their tradition. They planned for it. They have been saving up for 30 years, and this is what they're gifting to the bride. And I've also had couples where their parents weren't able to do that financially. However, they were still able to contribute in some ways. So, for example, they might contribute to paying for the open bar. They might contribute to paying for the DJ, but they're not able to pay for the entire $50,000 wedding.
Mhm.
And so then the couple will then pay for it themselves. So I think it really just depends on the family style.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Have you seen some? Well, I'm not going to ask that question. I'm back because that gonna start some beef. But as far as
Oh,
bridesmaids and
I want to know. Ask it. I think if a couple is engaged, they want to know all the good juicy details.
what true? Like, all right. So what about with step parents and
Yeah,
maybe dad just married? I mean, should you even include them in these? I mean, I guess that's a personal. I
I
guess
think
that
it's
depends on
personal. I think it's
family.
based on the relationship because I've had instances where the step parents were just as close to the bride or groom as the
Mm,
regular parent. I mean, not the regular parent, the birth parent. I'm sorry.
mm,
And then they wanted both of them to be involved. And
right.
sometimes they'll come to me and say, "Hey, like, what do you suggest? What will look best at our event? Should we have both dad and stepdad walk us down the aisle?" So I think it
Mm,
just depends on the family dynamics. If you're not super close to that person, I don't say just add them in there just because. But if you are close to that person, I think it's perfectly fine to add them in.
gotcha. Now, what do bridesmaids and groomsmen pay for? And is there any special privilege on the maid of honor and best man? Are they supposed to be paying for some or nah?
Yes. So bridesmaids and groomsmen typically pay for their attire, so their
Okay.
dress, their tux. Sometimes brides and grooms will gift like the jewelry components to their bridesmaids or groomsmen just as a gift for the wedding. But most of the time, if they don't do that, the bridesmaids are responsible for that. Maid of honor, best man. So they are more responsible for organizing things. So
Mm,
organizing the engagement party or the bachelorette party, the bachelor party, bridal shower, those types of things. And so they will put a
mm.
little bit more investment in those things while they're organizing it. So they might pay for the venue for the bridal shower. And then the
Oh,
other bridesmaids would help with the food and the drinks and the decor. So yeah, bridesmaids and groomsmen are responsible for things at the wedding, but they shouldn't be paying for things like their meal or
okay.
flowers
Let's talk about it. Let's talk
or
about it.
yeah, they should be paying for their attire, hair and makeup, haircuts for the guys,
Okay.
and then any pre-wedding events that are to honor the couple. So again, the bridal shower, bachelorette party, bachelor party, those things.
Okay. Okay. Well, I just set some bridesmaids and groomsmen free, or gave you a heads up, or some questions you should ask when someone says, "I want you to be my maid of honor," and all
Yeah,
that good
be
stuff.
prepared because some of these bridesmaids dresses are like $400. So
The bridesmaids dresses?
it's not cheap. Yeah, I was in a wedding where I had to pay $400 for a bridesmaid's dress.
I never even. You know what? You never even think about that because it'd be all about the bride and her dress. So when the bridesmaids are saying yesterday dress, is it at the same time or like the bride has a
Um,
particular style?
Usually it's different because the bridal shops usually are tailored to like bride dresses. There are a couple of bridal shops that are tailored to brides and bridesmaids, but the bride gets her moment, like her day,
Yeah.
to pick her dress. If you think $400 is a lot, you might want to think about some of these bridal gowns that are like $5,000.
Wow. Well, I expected that. I just didn't
Yeah,
for the bridesmaids in the role that they. I mean, you would want to know that in advance with some of the monetary
yeah.
responsibilities that when someone asks you to be part of their wedding. So no, I wow,
And
I get that.
I think that's also a big misconception when it comes to budgets because I don't think a lot of people talk about that. And so it's all fun. It's like, oh, be in the wedding party. And I don't think anyone ever sets a realistic budget like in conversation with their wedding party. And so
Right.
sometimes that's when people will drop out of the wedding and say, like, hey, this is too expensive. And so I think that's a good point. Like people should start having that conversation up front, like, hey, here's what I'm budgeting for my wedding.
Yeah.
That should be part of the proposal. Are
Yeah.
you okay with that? Are you willing to spend X amount of dollars, especially when it comes to like these bachelorette parties that are like overseas and,
Oh,
several
true.
days long? Back in the day, a bachelorette party was like a night out on the town.
True.
And now it's like 3 and 4 day trips, matching bathing suits,
Matching bathing
hotel.
suits. Yeah.
So those are all conversations that need to be had up front as well.
Oh man, that's fantastic. So listen, we're wrapping up the show. Give me like your all like you're working with a couple, you really like them, they don't have any clue about budgets. What's the number one advice before they hop into this thing and start making decisions that you would give them concerning the wedding budget?
So I would say I always give my clients an estimated budget based on their guest count. So I'm in the Charlotte market, and I say that right now we're seeing about $300 per person.
Okay.
That is my average number. And
Gotcha.
so I always will give them that number up front. We'll multiply it times their guest count, and I will say, this is a number that I think your wedding will cost.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with that number? And that is, I suggest that all couples have that conversation up front before they start booking vendors.
Hmm.
Because I've had instances where they'll book certain vendors and then they start getting the rest of the quotes and then they have to halt their planning because they don't have enough money. So, getting a realistic budget set and deciding who's going to contribute to it. Are you comfortable with it? And then moving forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this was awesome to you, that you were able to kind of go back if you are planning a wedding or approaching planning a wedding, that you know where you need to shift, what you need to do first, and things to avoid, things to do. And that's the goal of the whole show, is to provide you some quick insight on how to maneuver this thing. Because a lot of couples, you don't know. You're getting married for the first time, and maybe you got married for the second time, and you got married at court or didn't know, and all this is new to
Yeah.
you. So that way you don't have to just be blindsided. You can kind of prepare as you're approaching this thing. So Sacoya, I know you're a busy lady. Tell the watchers where they can find you, where they can learn more about you. If they want to ask any questions off the cuff, what should they do?
Yes, I am Jenkins and Co. Weddings on all social media platforms as well as my website, jenkinsandcoweddings.com. If you have any budget questions, feel free to DM me, email me. I'm an open book because I believe in educating and I think that everyone has the right to the wedding that they deserve. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to answer.
Awesome, Sequoia. It was definitely an honor. Definitely a pleasure to have you on Let's Talk Weddings. I appreciate you all. Thank you all for tuning in, and we out.